You found us. I'm glad you did, but I'm sorry you had to. So come sit in on our Widow Circle where trauma meets humor, and we remind you that you can not only survive, but thrive. This is Every Widow Thing. Hey guys, and welcome back to Every Widow Thing. We are taking a little staycation, about an hour and a half from Austin, Texas, at the Poppy Round Top, Sweet Holly's adorable Airbnb that is so charming and so relaxing. We're here over Valentine's Day weekend, and today we want to talk about Mel Robbins' new book called The Let Them Theory, which I've been following her podcast for a while, and then when the book came out, funnily enough, my fiance Brendan kind of beat me to it and downloaded it on Audible.
Go, Brendan. I'd like his perspective.
So he was talking to me about it, and I was like, oh my gosh, that was on my list over Christmas, and I didn't, I knew it was coming out, and I had forgotten, and so then I downloaded it, and I started listening. For all of you Audible fans out there, I'm a listener because I'm always I'm cleaning, or I'm walking the dogs, or I'm shopping, or I'm unloading the dishwasher, and I'm doing laundry, and so I'm more of a listener unless I'm on vacation. So I downloaded the Audible and then asked our Every Widow Thing group to do the same so we could discuss it here at Poppy. So
And I only got through chapter 5. I'm sorry.
Couldn't stop listening to it. Like it's so
While
good.
Just driving in her car around the neighborhood.
Driving around.
It's a good one. If you haven't heard of it or heard of her or followed any of her podcasting or her insights on Instagram, I think there's a lot of good insights for everyone.
But what you said when we were talking earlier in the car, like it's everything we know.
Yeah.
But we just,
And this is very simple. This let them, and I've used it multiple times since listening through chapter 5.
to part of the boat. No, I've used it too. Like with my mom and with my son. And I mean, it just makes you stop and think about it.
Mel talks about the guy behind her on the plane
Oh, yeah.
coughing. It's really all about what you can and can't control, right?
Right.
And I wanted to discuss this book because I felt like it spoke very specifically to the widow community in terms of just like shifts in relationships that happen and big life events, and then also this vulnerability that we all have and trying to make sure that we're not getting taken advantage of and that we know exactly what's coming because we were blindsided by the death of our husbands, et cetera, et cetera.
When I was reading this book, what really resonated with me was that whole idea of, well, I don't want anyone to be mad. I don't want anyone to think badly of me. It's the classic, and I hate to say, but I feel like it's true. Women do it way more than men. If y'all read that, yeah, it's like we don't want to hurt someone's feelings. I bend over backwards to make other people feel.
You're a total people pleaser. We all are,
But
but Whitney.
I don't want anyone to think I'm a bad person or something. I don't ever want them to think that I think I'm better than them.
I think that so many of us do that, waste so much energy, and we get so stressed out worrying about whatever it is, things that are out of our control.
Right. As a widow, especially, because you're like laying in bed at night going, what if my kid fails his class? Or what if for me, a lot revolves around the kids because that's where you want the most control, especially when we all had sudden death. I started feeling like I needed to have more control. This book can be so freeing, but it doesn't happen overnight. And yesterday I was getting in my head again about like, why can't I just let them? Why can't I? But I was having an imaginary fight for 2 hours, and then it didn't even end up happening.
The best part of what I took away from the book, which is so empowering, is that there's so many things that I want to do in this, whatever is this chapter of my life, because empty nesting or whatever, bird launching.
Free bird.
Free bird. Y'all called her. but there are a couple of things that I really wanted to do that I'm scared because it means putting myself out there. I thought she addresses that. She's like, first, what are you afraid of? Like, we should, us four, of all people, all our listeners, what do we really have to be afraid of? We've already had one of the worst things that can happen to a person.
Right.
Happen. So, hey, check that off. And we're still here. We're still thriving and
Still
some are
having joy.
probably still surviving at this point, and that's fine. But they know that years down the road, if they look at us, we're doing more than surviving. We're thriving. But it gave me kind of that push I needed to go, you're right. I keep putting off one more day to doing some of these things that I've been scared to do. And quite frankly, the podcast I know is out of some of our comfort zones. And we did it.
How scared we all were to start this. Nobody wants to get on here and bare your soul and talk about hard things and talk about personal things, emotional things, and loss, and your kids, and your dead husband, and your in-laws.
And yet, like, you all got over it. I mean, I was so worried, like, this person's going to listen and what are they going to think? That made me, when I was reading the book, think a lot about how I felt starting the podcast.
How it applies to widowhood when you are trying to navigate this new normal and everyone's giving their opinion or they're judging you on what you're doing. Oh, you're dating, it's too soon. Or, oh, you're going to sell your house. Oh, you're going to keep his car. Oh, you haven't gotten rid of.
Oh, I had the, like, aren't you going to date yet? Let's get you on the dating app right now.
Where's your new guy? I mean, that too.
And also, why aren't you still talking about it 13 years later? Right. Well, they didn't come back, just so you know. They aren't gonna. So that was what I had to say to a family member who was like, I thought in 13 years that you probably wouldn't be talking about it. And I said, well, they didn't come back. So I'm still living.
Still a part of your life.
You have a new person, Whitney and Kira. You know this. That doesn't take away from the loss that you still had.
The let them part is stop worrying about, you cannot control. And we've talked about this in an earlier episode, like, Kira, you call it your pile of shit, their pile of shit. I had used the yard, scenario or whatever. You only have control over your pile of shit. You only have control over your yard. You cannot control what anyone else thinks about you. And in the book, she shares a story about a kid who wants to go to a birthday party or weekend, and also the grandmother wants to see them. So they try to compromise and do both. And the grandma was still mad that they didn't come in sooner, and the friend was still angry that they left early. And the point is, when you spend time trying to control other people's thoughts about you, you're never going to win.
No.
And as a widow, I, especially early on, especially when I was trying to navigate the finances and stuff, and Hunter's father, who is so sweet, but he is a financial guy, which is where Hunter got all his budgeting skills. He was like, what are you going to get out of this house? When are you going to sell his car? Like, you got to get, but he was coming from a place of, I want you to be financially secure and not spending money on things that are unnecessary. But I was still in a very emotional state of, this is his car and I want to sit in it and I want to listen to the music that he was listening to and I want to drive around in it, and this is the home where our last home we had together. I'm not ready to give it up yet. But it caused me anxiety because I worried about what other people were thinking. Why hasn't she sold the house? Why hasn't she gotten rid of the car? And even now, I just finally I hate to say got rid of, but I finally got Hunter's clothes out of the closet. Since I've started listening, I've been trying to say, let them. It's not an overnight thing. It's starting the awareness of, oh, I actually don't have control over this.
I feel like a lot of the let me part, it's really the important part to me, because it's okay to let them, but if you are sidestepping how you really feel about something and not speaking up, that's when people get angry, when they just stuff the feelings. They're like, I'm so mad at such and such. Don't stuff it down. Say your piece. To let them is great. Let someone just have their thing, but then let me speak up for yourself. Honestly, they're going to think what they're going to think anyway. You had friends that, are going to have their own opinions about what you're doing.
Right. It says something in the book like, there's people you care about that are thinking bad thoughts about you right now, and you're thinking bad thoughts about them. And I thought that was really freeing because, yeah, to get back to the let me, for me, when I was widowed, that was just a seismic shift. And I think it would be for anyone in their life. For me, it was just massive because my husband was killed. I was mangled and horribly injured. My child was injured. My other two kids were bereft. When the accident happened, I was forced into this, what Mel talks about. And she talks about trauma and all that. Yeah. I was forced into this mode out of let the town judge me if I can no longer show up the way I used to show up for my kids. Let them judge me if I buy something, for myself or a new car and they're going, well, I thought her husband died and how could she afford that big car? Or let them worry about whether or not I'm out on a date or they catch me in town. I mean, the town's small enough. They catch me out on a date. Oh, well, how long was the husband dead? Ooh, what's going on?
I feel like in the beginning, I didn't worry about it as much as when time went by, I started worrying about what people thought more.
Well, you're in shock for, the first year. You're not really thinking clearly.
Yeah, true.
I had a period of time where I tried to just give myself grace. I had a friend from high school who came and when I was in the hospital and just said, whatever happens from here on forward, because she was basically like, you're going through it. This horrible thing happened to you and your sweet children, and just whatever happens next. And I was probably spiraling, even in the hospital, even on drugs. I was like, what's going to happen here? This one's got that lesson. That one's got dance. That one's got soccer. Who's keeping up with the lawn? So then when I got out, I had to find some balance for myself because I kind of knew intrinsically, and I think Mel would agree with this. And it's like you've always said, Lacey, like you have to put your own oxygen mask on first. And so even though the kids came first, they were in therapy before I was in therapy. All their routine was maintained before I really got back into a routine. Like everything was for the kids. I obviously was overloaded and needed to balance that with moments of just getting away or just having some fun or just like going out at night and just getting a break. And so I gave myself a lot of grace. And I think that was my let me moment. That was let me do what I need to do.
Well, people are going to talk no matter what. So you might as well do what you need to do.
Yeah.
Because they're going to. I mean, I told y'all.
And let them.
Yeah.
Let them.
Yeah. And I told y'all with the lady, it was so freeing when she said this because everybody's always worried about your finances.
Yeah.
When your husband dies suddenly, he was the one making the money. I mean, all of us had husbands that were predominantly making, the bigger paycheck. And so the CEO of the company my husband used to work for, his wife and I had gotten to be good friends. And she came over one day and she said, how's it going? I was like, I am so tired of people coming to me asking how I'm doing. Like, is your money okay? Is it really getting in your business? These were people that did not care really about if I was going to be okay. They were really just trying to get in my business. She said, just tell no, it's not. Let them write you a check.
Oh, that's good.
She said, that'll shut them up so fast. And I thought, I am going to do that the next time because people they're going to judge no matter, like I went and got a new car, but they didn't know that Oliver and I had actually already bought a much nicer car. And as soon as he died, literally, we were at the car dealership. It was like not even a week prior. I went and downgraded the car to the smaller version of it because I was like, I don't need a bigger car now. It's only 2 people. But I felt a little bit judged.
That car was total.
So Holly, you also were telling us to get on board with this book. What resonated with you?
There's so many different, it's interesting because I do remember a group of friends. I was always included, 9 times out of 10 included and, invited to dinners with, husbands, with their husbands, which I'm grateful for. But I do remember one time that I found out after the fact that a group of friends went on a trip together with their husbands.
Right.
I wish
Including had Toby been alive.
I probably wouldn't have.
Oh.
I mean, I don't know.
Yeah.
They didn't even tell me they were going. And then I found out they all went on a trip, and I was like, really hurt. But now I look back, I'm like, who cares? Let them. They love me. And I don't know. I don't know why I was so.
It's helping me a lot with my family because that is really where I try to control people.
Oh, well, it's helping me with my mom.
Mhm.
Sorry, Mom. But
The whole point, I think, of the let me theory is it stops resentment. If you want to behave that way, I will let you behave that way. It doesn't need to impact me in any way. I don't need to spiral on it. I don't need to think about it for days. I will let you behave that way or react that way or respond that way. It's actually very kind.
Well, it also allows them to, because the one thing that when I was raising Ryder, I remember very young remembering this because, my family dynamic was very different growing up. I wanted my son, I wanted to know who he really was because you and I were talking about this in the car today, Whitney, that it was important to me when I raised him that he was who he's really going to be. Whatever's happening in the world, he's going to give me his opinion on it. And if it's something I don't agree with, but that's letting them, he has a right to his opinion, and let me allows me to have my opinion too. And we can still coexist. I wish that we could have this in the country that we live in today. Like, why can't we find a way to be more compromising instead of being so hateful? And that's what I feel like this book is about. Not compromising your beliefs, but being more
open.
And that's reactive. We're reacting to someone else. We don't need to.
And be compassionate. Maybe they're reacting in a way because of something they've been through, like a trigger,
Right.
because something that triggers me may not even register to Holly.
I loved that chapter in the book about where she talks about trying to change other people.
Mm-hmm.
And she uses the example of like her friend whose husband is not exercising and he's on the couch eating bad food and watching sports, whatever, instead of getting fit. And then she's like going on the Peloton in the house and getting fit. And she's worried about him, right? It boils down to her fear that he's not healthy. But she had referenced some specialists that she consulted when writing the book who say that 9 times out of 10, this was really good for me to hear. She was saying the more it's proven, the more you nag, and this is just a good reminder because we all know this, the more you nag someone to change their ways, the more they dig in. And that's what you were just saying. Like the more someone tried to control your behavior or tell you what you should and shouldn't do, the more you were like, fuck off. I don't want to do that. I'm going to do it in my own time. And that was a really good chapter for me because I think in my new relationship, I'm still looking for things that I had before. I'm still looking for things that I could change about my partner. But at the same time, I absolutely love him and I need to back off and I need to let him make those changes in his own time. It's his choice.
Well, and also, like she says, what was it like? Adults are only going to change when they want to change.
Yeah.
And I mean, and that kind of goes back to the widow thing. Like, I was the one that like, I got to get out of bed. I have to go exercise. I could have stayed in bed.
That no one can.
I was the only one that could do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's addiction. That goes back to like addiction. And Kira and I have both had experience with addiction in our families. And you learn very early on. It doesn't matter. You can rationalize, you can talk, you can, all of the things. And it's until they are ready, they are never going to change.
And that's a difficult one.
It's so hard. And I noticed that the kids, right? We all feel, of course, we all love our children, but because they went through such a trauma, I feel like it heightens our need to control their lives to make it the best.
You want it to be the best. Yeah.
Right.
You want to
all
fix
it's
everything.
doing is making a difficult relationship between me and my child.
What's the fine line between a child and an adult and your child is 19?
This
or
is the
20.
let me part. Me.
I know, but you're still like paying for their college.
Well, I had a good example for that. She kind of touched on it, and this really rang out in my head because Ryder, I don't think he would mind me sharing this. He does therapy, and he had an epiphany in therapy. He wasn't going to continue therapy. He hated it. He's like, I have already done this. It was regular talk therapy. He has anxiety, and it's not school anxiety. I was like, well, what is it? If it's not school anxiety, what is it? Like, because everything in your life. And he said, you know what I learned in therapy, which I was so glad he stuck with it. Because I told him, I said, if I'm paying the bills, I feel like I should be able to influence part of your life while I'm still paying for things. Because there were things that he wanted to do. Right. I said, well, if you want to do this, I would appreciate if you would continue therapy. And he said that when he went there, he said, what I found out was that this is where his anger came in. And y'all can really relate to this. His anger came in because he had been spending a lot of his young years, particularly middle school, high school, not standing up for himself, people at school or whatever. And he said, I was angry about it. He said, because I was trying to be perfect because I didn't want to create more trouble for you. And I said, isn't that ironic? For mom. And I was trying to create the perfect little world for him, like almost like putting bubble wrap around him and trying to make sure everything at home was okay. And he had the right food. And I thought if I did all these perfect things, then he won't have to suffer any more losses. And the joke is, he was like, I was trying to be perfect for you. You were trying to be perfect for me. And we were both miserable. And she points that out very clearly in the book. You cannot try to create a perfect world for them. They are going to have to make mistakes. They're going to have to. I mean, she dresses the little kids too. That's obviously very different. But
She also talks about blended families and stuff, which I think was interesting.
I have, a teenage stepdaughter. So she's 17. So she's still a child for sure. And I think at one point she says 25.
Well, before 25, your brain's not fully formed, so you can make some pretty bad choices, even at my age.
But some of these parents, like, am I still, footing the bill till 30? Like, what's going on here?
My last therapist that I had before I stopped doing therapy, which just was like 2 years ago or something, she said boundaries, which is really what this is, right? Setting some boundaries.
Yeah.
The let me part is the boundaries. And she said, boundaries are not about what you will allow them to, to do. It's about what you will allow yourself to do. So when you go, like Holly, when you asked, where's the line? You have to ask yourself, like my kid was failing all of her classes. And, my therapist was like, look, it doesn't, and I wanted to be supportive and I wanted to help. But at the same time, I don't want to keep footing the bill for Fs. And also, I didn't want to throw her out to the wolves if she's mentally and emotionally not ready.
Right.
But what my therapist said is, you set the boundaries. So basically, it boiled down to, I'm willing to pay for all of your living and food and all of that and school if you can maintain. I didn't even say like a B average. I was like, if you could just pass your class, my boundary will be that I will pay for these things. And what was crazy is that when I finally actually did what she said, Sydney failed her classes, and then she had to take on her own bills. And for the last year, she's been paying all of her own bills, and she has so much confidence. Yes.
It's amazing. She's amazing.
You assume that your child, they couldn't handle school, so they can't handle getting a job.
Some of them don't want, college isn't for everyone.
Exactly.
And Mel would say, stop enabling.
Yeah.
Let them have some failures, and then they'll figure it out.
Well, she also now has skin in the game. She's because if she wants to have nice things or be able to pay for rent, she's got to work. Now she's doing it, and it gives her confidence.
And two things happened that were amazing. One is that our relationship changed immediately because I was no longer resentful that I am paying money and she's not doing her part. Like I was so angry to do what I wanted her to do. Didn't have any. I was so angry about that, and it really hurt our relationship. And she was so disappointed in herself, or didn't want to, was upset that I was disappointed, that then she tried to stay away. So that it made our relationship better. But the bigger thing is that it gave her self-confidence because she realized I am paying my own bills. I am working 40 hours a week at a steakhouse, busting my butt.
More confident.
She's more
and
confident and
happy.
she knows that she can do it. And now she's in her second semester now at community college and she's making straight A's, even in math, you guys.
Wow.
Even in math.
Awesome. Well, that's what
Well, I'm like, wow. I couldn't do that.
Who she was at 18 is very different than who she is now at 22. And the 22-year-old is ready to focus and get down and do the work. And by the way, if she didn't want to go to college, we told her a million times. It's just me, but I still say we sometimes. Anyway,
You and me, Whitney.
me and Holly, we could talk about this book forever and a day. There's so many good tidbits in here. Kira, why would you want widows and people grieving and with loss, why would you want them to read this book?
Oh gosh, I really enjoyed just being able to take back the power. When this horrible thing happened to me and I felt like I had lost all control of my life, I wish I'd had like this theory or this book to tell me it was all in my control. Even when I was in the hospital kind of flailing, even when I was going through rehab, even when I was going through surgeries and learning how to walk again and learning how to drive again and learning how to take care of my kids again, it was all up to me. I should have just blocked out everyone else and anything else, and all that was important to me at the time was getting better and my kids, and just being told that was okay. I think I just needed to hear that was okay.
Okay,
Just focus on those things.
what about you?
Well, for me, I've always been like so worried about what other people think. Like even the podcast, like, I don't want to talk about that. I don't want somebody to judge me. I mean, I can remember Toby saying, who cares what people think? But I've always worried about what other people think. And it's made me back up and say, let them think whatever they want.
right, because they're going to anyway.
And there's nothing you can do about it.
I would learn a good saying. I remember this in high school. Well, they said you wouldn't worry so much about what other people think if you knew how little they did.
Right.
They're thinking about themselves.
The main takeaway for me was that she kept saying, what's that dream that you have? She, at the very end of the book, she says, but let me tell you to go find your dream. Go follow your dream. And I loved it. It was like if someone needed permission, Mel just gave it to you.
If you could just get rid of that concern of what other people think, you would take so many more risks. I know I'm a good person. So why do I care if someone else doesn't see it? Just go out and do it.
And someone will,
Yeah.
like you do.
Yeah.
There'll be some that will and some that
But
won't.
even like she said, and we'll end on this, even your own family who loves you to death still has terrible thoughts about you sometimes. Yeah.
Yeah.